part of, well, a couple of things we want to do. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of interoperability between Revit and Inventor, and that's really what we're focused on. The idea of being able to create a manufacturing package, whatever that may be, within Inventor, and how do we send that across? And there's a couple of different ways we can do that. One's going to be the idea of catalog creation, and we'll talk about what that means here in just a moment. And then a different workflow where we're taking that from not just individual components, but maybe a larger set. So sending not just an individual component over, but an entire system. And then some ways we can extend that further. So there's some in Canvas products and Canvas tools we can use, things directly within the software. And there's things we're going to use that extend that. And the history of this is kind of interesting. So I mentioned I've been here a little bit. And I go back to the days when interoperability was just, I drew it in AutoCAD, so I gave it to someone else who's drawing in AutoCAD. Really easy. We take it from one of those products right over to the other. And so there wasn't a whole lot of concern since these were, being drawn in AutoCAD, way back, I started in 1996 or 7, I can't remember now. We just drew it in AutoCAD, handed it to the architects who were drawing in AutoCAD. Interoperability wasn't really an issue at all. Then we got here. So there's two very different modeling kernels that we're dealing with. And I'll talk about Inventor just for a moment. Inventor is a purpose-built tool for mechanical design. We're going to, when I'm working in Inventor, I'm working in terms of individual components being put together into assemblies, creating detailed drawings of those. Ultimately, I end up with a complete 3D model that should be a digital twin of its real-world counterpart. So a lot of times I'm worried about nuts, bolts, screws, getting hole sizes down to the thousands, some of those ideas. And it uses a specific modeling engine to do that. Revit's a little bit different, right, Brad?
Definitely. When you take a look at Revit, we're really looking at the relationships and the spaces that things take up to go into a building environment, where we might have collisions, where we might have different areas that need to be modified a little bit. So the real question is, how do I take Caleb's really, really detailed information and kind of strip it down a little bit to where I can see not only the object, but the operational requirements or clear spaces required for that product?
Yeah, so we had this moment when it was really easy, both in AutoCAD, we send it back and forth, easy enough. Now we've moved to do two different modeling kernels, two different ideas and philosophies on how this is done. So this is something that Autodesk has been, for a while, this was very separate. The only way to transfer this was through what we would call dumb solid. So we could take it down to an SAT file and send that across. But back in Inventor 2016, we started seeing some tools where, for example, in Inventor, I could import a Revit file directly, and I could export to a Revit family. And Revit family is going to become important here in a moment when we talk about the catalog workflow. Inventor 2021, we kind of see this cadence pick up, because in 2021, we've got AnyCAD for Revit, where I can link a Revit model to mine. 2022, I can export Inventor as a Revit native file. 2023, we add some new tools. We're going to see some of these today, the idea of data exchanges and construction cloud. And Brian, could you just talk a little bit about with Revit, the interoperability that we have there, the ways those get pulled in?
Yeah, and really with the Inventor 2023 and 2024, with the data exchange capabilities, I can start to real-time communicate and collaborate with manufacturers through data exchange, BIM exchange. We no longer are forced to work directly in a SAT file or a DWG file. We can exchange that intelligent information, keep the manufacturer updated as designs change, and I can see real-time kind of the stages of the manufacturing product inside of my building design or my exterior shell or whatever we're working with you on.
So I mentioned there's a couple different things. I can export, if I'm working in Inventor, I can export to Revit family, and I can export to a Revit native file. And part of the reason there's a difference there is a couple of different workflows that we have. So an example would be, I might have components, and I did one a while ago. It was a series of solar panels that were going onto a building, or maybe it's exterior cladding that's going onto a building that has to be manufactured. I'm creating it in Inventor, I'm having that, and it's standard components. I just want to be able to say, here you go. Here's a standard component. Please use it in all your Revit designs from here on in. So I can take a Inventor file and save it out as a Revit family. Once it's a Revit family, Brian on his end can bring that in and use it on his side. So Brian, can you talk a little bit just about families and kind of how where this catalog workflow fits in with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Families are absolutely amazing when we can get that information from a manufacturer. The Inventor process of generating families generates what I call a static family. And kind of think of a family as a block in AutoCAD. It's a static representation that's 3D with a lot of information potentially behind it. Now, I can use that in my design and know exactly what I'm getting. You become the product that's specified when you provide a family catalog or a family component. Families really are nice for companies that, as Caleb mentioned, have a kit of parts or a product catalog that you can share, and I can pick products out of that. But keep in mind, when you bring them out of Inventor, those are considered static. At that point, they're no longer dynamic or flexible or able to change in size.
Yep. So that's one thing we can do. We can save out, we can create this catalog by exporting families from it. We're actually going to look at a different side of this, and this is going to be the idea of I am working on products, or it could be a factory line, it could be maybe it's a skid of some kind, but this is going to end up going into a building, and I can get the information from Revit as to the space claim that I'm allowed to have. I can then build within that and then send that entire thing back to Brian, or I always think it turns into Brian. Oh, sorry, let's jump past that one as examples of content. But I want to jump to this idea of how this might work, where I need to work within a building. So I'll start out where, the first step of this might be, I can request that the architect share the Revit file. And Brian, can you talk just a little bit about that segment there with BIM 360 and what we're talking about there?
Yeah, with the Autodesk Construction Cloud, it's a great file sharing platform, a linking platform. I have the ability to work on my Revit file just directly inside of the Construction Cloud. And inside the viewing capabilities, I can take a portion or a subset of that building that really impacts the manufacturer and share out that minute information.
Yep.
Manufacturer, Caleb doesn't care about the whole thing. He only wants his area.
So I can bring that into, from the Construction Cloud, bring that into Inventor directly. I can also link it to Vault. So if we're using the Vault PLM tools, we can link to the Construction Cloud through that and pull those into there. What we'll see today is I'm going to link it into my Inventor, and then I can begin building my product around that shell or the information that Brian's sending me, whatever is necessary for that. Once I have that, I can export it as a native Revit file and send it back so that it links in, and the link is maintained between the two. So if issues come up, if things need to be changed, we can update the Revit export, which then updates in Revit and goes right on down the line. So this is where we're going to start. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to talk about how I can get a Revit file from Inventor here. A lot of the Inventor information is going to have a lot of pieces of geometry, a lot of detail in there. I don't want to just blindly bring it into my Revit project. I get more control when I'm linking that information in. Thanks, Caleb.
Okay, so what we're going to do is, here's some examples that we might see of something like this. When we're talking building product manufacturing, it's something that goes into a building. So it's something typically engineered to order. So it's not just a product that I'm putting out there, a simple product. It's something we're building to match the specifications. I'm going to create these components in the manufacturing tool, and then I can export them out along with any BIM information that I need along with that. I've got tools in there so that it goes in and it understands how it works. Once that's in, it can then be appended into Revit, brought in as part of that. Brian, I don't know if you have anything to add here. It's kind of, I think I've just talked through it pretty well there, and we'll see it in just a minute.
No, I think you've got it very well there. Thanks.
Okay, so what we want to do is talk about this communication. So because AutoCAD has, try this again, wow, AutoCAD. Because Inventor has AnyCAD, I'm going to leverage a data exchange given to me by Brian. He's going to set it up and I can bring it in. Once I have that data exchange, I can then create my information. And again, in this case, it's an entire work cell that I have that needed to fit maybe within a factory layout. Take that and share that back either directly to Autodesk Docs, which is part of what I'll be playing with today, or I can do it with the project sync within Vault Professional. So there's a couple of ways that we can link that together. But the big idea here is I can reference his geometry, build off of it, create my information, and then push it back out in a format that's easily consumable. What we'll see is once we have that data exchange, pull the information, create it, and push it, we're going to go from Revit, Docs, Inventor, and right into that app. So this idea of a data exchange, Brian, you mentioned it earlier, but could you give us a little clear idea of what we're talking about with a data exchange?
Yeah, with the data exchange, my Revit file exists up inside of the construction cloud. With that, I can give Caleb permission to see a specific folder, a specific location, or a specific set of files inside of the construction cloud. Once I'm happy and I've kind of redefined that entire building down to a specific zone or area, I have the ability to create a data exchange file that's going to allow Caleb to just bring in what you're seeing, the columns, the ductwork, and the floor for those specific bays that are impacted by what Caleb needs to work on.
Okay, so we've kind of talked through this idea. We want to show it a little bit here in action. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make Brian the presenter here, and I'll have him start out by making that data exchange, and then we'll switch back to me to pull that in.
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody, Caleb, you should be seeing my Revit screen now at this point.
Thanks,
okay.
guys.
Excellent. So right now I'm just in my default view. So one thing I'd like to do is go ahead and duplicate this view, save it out with the new name, and I'm going to go ahead and crop things down. What I'm doing is I'm really starting to break this down to the specific areas that are important to Caleb, where I really want him to be able to focus here on it. I'll go ahead and drag that crop region up here a little bit. I might go a little bit further. I can turn things on and off inside of here. I can hide visibility so that Caleb's not going to have to worry about anything on the outside here potentially. Spin it around as needed and generally save this off as a specific view that's important to what Caleb needs or what our manufacturer needs. We're really going to have him working kind of in this area, these two bays here. So now that I'm happy with it, I'll want to go ahead and save this to my central file. I always want to make an update of it, and you'll want to go in and republish this file. So publishing is allowing non-Revit users to be able to see that information accurately. And to publish is very simple. We just go in here and there'll be a published latest if anything's been updated. So what this is going to do is give me an updated file inside of my construction cloud. I made it a little bit easier here. I've already browsed out to where this is, picked the right project and the right folder structure, and I can see my updated Revit file. So with that file, I can open it and view it. You notice this kind of looks familiar. This is one of the views. This is the building I was working with. I've got a lot of views already pre-created, 2D and 3D. Well, one of those views is my interior that I saved out. This is just that really refined area that I need Caleb to focus on. Now, instead of having him bring in all these thousands and thousands of pieces of geometry, I can come out here and create a very simple data exchange. I don't need to keep that data exchange in my file folder structure. I can give it out to a folder structure that's intended just for the manufacturer. And there's some key information here. It's automatically identifying how many objects. And Caleb, do you want to talk about objects, where objects are important, just briefly, when you're bringing things into Inventor?
Yeah, so obviously, if we look at Inventor, it can handle very large assemblies, but a building is a very large assembly. So what we want to do is minimize, we're going to minimize things going a couple of different ways. One is we're going to try and minimize the amount of components I'm bringing into Inventor to work around, just to make my life a lot easier. And then when I send it back, we're going to minimize the level of detail that we're sending back over. So both of these work together so that these two different modeling kernels and two different philosophies can now complement each other as opposed to working against each other.
Excellent, thank you. Caleb, I've got that file. It's created, it's ready for you.
Right.
Go ahead and take control and I'll let you bring it in.
All right, so I'm gonna just jump back over here. So I'm gonna bring that same item up over here in Inventor. And the way we do that is, I was kind of working in the background there while we're going along, but this is where I have those data exchanges. This is the data that Brian is sharing with me. I can go take a look at those projects that are out there, pull that information in, and then just load it right into my Inventor through that data exchange. So everything that he's working on that side will show up on this side. And that's because have been added to his project. I'm part of it. I can see that information within here. I can log in and take a look at the info. So that's where we get to. Once I've got this in here, this is now, I'm in Inventor. All the things I can ever do in Inventor, create new components, work with the geometry, whatever it may be, I can now do working with his factory layout that I have. So I'm able to bring it in with a minimum number of objects. I do have raceways, I've got components, I've got some of these ideas in here. So I can see all of that, but I don't have to, and it actually comes in with all of those Revit, what did I call them, Brian? Categories of different items I have in here. So you can see I've got a little bit of my exterior wall, I've got the windows, my flex duct is in here, my ductwork is in here. This is the area I'm going to have to work around with when I'm beginning to build off of this. I'm going to point out just a couple of things. One, and change my view slightly here. I like to see edges. It's a little more clear to me. So here I can see the edges, I can see all the components. I could begin building right on top of this. So when I go to create a component, all of those faces I can access, I could build right on top of it. So if I were doing something, for example, I need to create some custom piece of duct that's going to come right off of here. I can start with that face to build off of. If I needed to work off of this floor so that I could begin having an area where I'm going to bring pieces into, again, I can select that. I can extract geometry from it, so I can project these lines. The way that this works in the background is it's a linked file to my Inventor file that I have as part of it. So it's very easy for me to bring it in, link it to here, and now begin placing geometry or creating geometry based off of this information. So I'm going to just skip back here, give myself a slightly different view. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on some geometry that I've already brought into here. So now I've got a full Inventor assembly, all my components, my arm, I've got a factory cell that I'm building up, creating as part of this and putting into place. This is the area I'm responsible for and the information I'm responsible for. And I've gone through, I've created it, built it up, all the things that I would typically do inside of Inventor. Now I want to send that information back over to Brian so that he can reference it into his Revit model. So we're going to complete the round trip. I was able to bring in this view of his through that design exchange, and I've got it in here, created my information, going to send it back. I am going to turn this off. I don't want to send his information back to him. So we'll go ahead and turn that off.
And that's a key thing, guys. Make sure when you're sending that back, you don't want to give me my information back here. My information is really what's important to me. Your information is what I need to see.
So I'm going to go ahead and take this, and I'm simply going to export it out. And I have the option to export that out. I got to be in the right spot as a Revit file. So I can take this information and send it out as an RVT. Make sure I'm in the right spot here. There we go. So when I go to export, RVT is one of the options that I have. This is a native Revit file. RVT is the DWG of Revit, I guess I'll say. It's the default format that's going to be in there. So I'm going to say I want to do that, and I get a lot of options. So a couple of things that I'm going to concern myself with when I take a look at this. I'm going to send this out, and I can choose which model state that I have. And I've got one here called medium. It's a medium level of detail that I have as part of this. I can replace components with just envelopes if I want to. So I could, take each part and have it just be a block. I don't want to here because I need this at a minimum level of geometry visible so that Brian can use it.
Yep.
But I can remove holes, fillets, chamfers, pockets, embosses, tunnels. I can select individual features. And this is something you'll have to work with a little bit because, as we mentioned, where Brian doesn't want to send me too many objects, I don't want to send him too much detail going back. We want to have this kind of sweet spot of enough information for me to work with on my end so I can begin putting this together, and enough detail when it gets over to his side so that it's clear what we're working on. And that's where we're talking about the idea of number of objects coming in, detail going out. So I'm going to go ahead and take this. This looks good. I'm going to browse to the location. And in my case, I'm going to drop this in my docs folder. I'm going to go out here, put it right into my manufacturing area that I have as part of this, and I'm going to save it out. So I've simplified it. I've taken it down, broken down these features, made this a simpler version of this overall. Now I'm going to save this as a Revit file to Autodesk Docs so that we can round trip it back over and append it directly to Revit. I'm going to say, yep, I don't need it to be in the active project. This is kind of an external thing, and it's going to take that and I can save that out. It'll take a minute to do this in the background. One thing I want to point out is I can do this and it becomes a linked item here. I can update these at any time. So it knows I'm exporting this out to Revit. It's taking the information, processing the features, saving out the bodies, pushing the information out, and then creating that Revit file for me so that I can link back to it whenever I need to.
And I think the linked components are very important side of here. You notice you're seeing my production B that Caleb went ahead and linked in. If I make changes to my model, that reference that I gave him will automatically update for him. He'll get notified that it's out of date. He can come in here and just quickly update that background with having to start over and re-bring everything back in.
And on my side, it's a little bit different. I specifically have to push an update. With the data exchange that we just saw, I'm linking it directly from Brian. So if he does make a change, it's just like any other Inventor file. It's automatically going to change on my end and go to that. So Brian, I'm going to pass it back over to you. That's about published out there. And then I'll let you pull it back up on your end. You are the presenter.
Excellent. Thank you, Caleb. So where I'm going to start off here is, I'll share my monitor here. Everybody should be seeing my file here in Revit.
Yep.
I'm already broken down back to that main area that I wanted to share off. And this one, I called it working, but it's just a name view of that Revit model. So from here, it becomes very simple. I use standard Revit functionality to where I can link in a Revit model. Since that's what Caleb gave me, I'm just going to link that in. I'm going to grab my project files here. Oh, I didn't want to go there. I actually put that one back a little further. I grabbed a copy of it and put it in my architectural side there. There's that model. I'll link it in, and here in just a moment, everything's going to show up. So now I've got a reference background and really what's starting to become a fully federated model. You notice I've got some architecture here, I got my structure, I got my MEP, and now I've got what the manufacturing is doing to me. And oh my gosh, Caleb, what are you doing to me here? Looks like, duct is already in. I'm not going to have my duct system move everything here. I'm going to have you change that crane around. So there's a couple different ways. We could call each other, get on a phone, send an email. But really, if I save this file, I can really come in here to the construction cloud. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the construction cloud here for you.
That's showing up.
Yep, and I'm going to grab the version of that model and start to take a look at some of my views. I've got a good view here that kind of looks at it from a personal eye perspective here of what's happening. And I need to communicate with Caleb that we've got a problem. So I can come in here and go ahead and say, we have a clash issue here. I'm going to actually select that crane and tag it to it. Now I can generate an issue with an image thumbnail of it that I can assign out to Caleb. I can give a little bit more description. Oh, let's not do telocate. Let's do relocate, please. Thank goodness for spell check there. I can assign it out to who it needs to be assigned to. I'll go ahead and assign that out to Caleb. But you know what? I'm just a production person. I noticed it, but my manager needs to be aware of it. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go ahead and assign Mark as a manager to watch our communications. I can provide detailed information, locations. This is kind of becoming mission critical. So I'm going to upset Caleb here because I think Caleb's on vacation here in about 2 hours. But I'm going to give him a due date of Friday. Let's say end of day Friday. Other things, what's the root cause? I can have a little bit of fun with this. Maybe it's a design issue. Maybe it's a code compliancy. Or maybe, hey, let's have fun here. It was just human fatigue. He was tired. We've been working a lot there. And I can start to provide additional information about that crane that we've selected. Product cut sheets, PDFs, pictures, web links to this. Now, I really don't have to do anything to push this or publish it. Caleb's automatically going to get notified, and I can take a look at an active log of when Caleb starts to respond to this. So not only is this sharing data, but it can also become a communication tool for us as we work throughout the design process. Caleb,
So
I'll let you take it from there.
Yep, so on my end, I will switch back to being the presenter. So on my end, as Brian pointed out, I've already gotten the email letting me know that there's an open issue. Here's the problem, here's the document we're linked to, and I can begin to go take a look at what that issue is and be able to take care of it. So what we're trying to do is have that run through, have a through line that goes all the way through where we started with the concept of simply taking the Revit information that I need. I get that published to me. I add all of my information, and I can send that back where Brian can bring that into his model. If there's any issues, errors, updates that need to happen, all of that can be communicated through the construction cloud. So we've got ways of working with that. And all of this is default tools that are built into there. At this point, there's nothing that we've changed, updated. It's no real customization. It's just part of the tool sets that are available now. And I think that's one of the great things about this. One thing we do want to talk about is extending this a little bit. So a lot of times, if we're working with something, we may not want to, we may not have access. There may not be this level of interoperability where we're going back and forth. And we may not need all of that data. And we've seen this in a couple of different options, a couple of different scenarios where we've worked with this. We've talked to clients and they say, we could bring in the Revit model, we could begin working on it, but really, I just need to know a few things about it. And I want a quicker way to pass that information back and forth rather than create those views, link it in, and so forth. And working with those clients, we have been able to create a transfer engine. And I'll explain this a little bit more. It's really a software bridge. And in this case, we're moving away from the idea of what's built into the software. And we're using Imaginate software development team to create a way to pass information back and forth. And what we're doing is we're passing geometry, not CAD files, not like we saw, but just locations, points. We can do things in there and take it further, where we can say we're going to validate the design to fabrication. Maybe we have not to exceed lengths. Maybe we've got rules that we need to build into the inventor side of it when we're creating that information. We can then simply push a button and send that back out and automatically create either Revit families or Revit files, automatically create those fabrication drawings. And because of this, we can have this linked in such a way that it's going to be interactive, not reactive like we just saw, where here's an issue, I got to react to it. Like Brian said, I'm tired, it's, you know, I'm going on vacation, whatever it is. We've got ways that we can interactively collaborate on those design changes. So let's talk, I'll kind of talk through a couple different ideas behind this. We can have this go either direction. And again, that idea of passing geometry. I mentioned points. So an example that Brian and I have worked on in the past has been exterior cladding, where I'm making metal cladding for a building. I may not need that entire wall. I just might need anchor points on there. I could then take that, pull that geometry in using the transfer engine to push that out. Then we can do things, I mentioned the RFAs, pulling bills of material for the entire project. Tagging similar geometry. Maybe I've got 20 different panels that I'm pushing out to there, but I need a way to tag them where they're all panel A, as opposed to individual components that I'm sending out. And then have large scale reports, bills of material, schedules, etc. Let me give you another example of this. This is a little more animated than just conceptual as we go through here. So in this case, this is kind of what Brian was just showing. He's got the factory floor in there. But for me, to begin setting up the information I need, this is all I really need. These points, I need to know the envelope that I'm working with. So rather than send me that whole model, work with that, we can use a transfer engine, tag those points, extract them out, and then over in Inventor, automatically build geometry that matches not only those points, but the different levels that I need to work with, so that the points in one location match the points in the other. This is a simple version of this, but I think this is one that's easily grasped. I need to grab anchor points. I need to have not to exceed thresholds, and that's all I care about. Send me that and I'll build the rest. We can use this type of transfer engine to take that information, pass it from one to the other. And we've worked with several clients now on versions of this. Sometimes we're passing a lot of information. Sometimes it's very simple information. Sometimes we're going as far as creating detailed drawings. Sometimes it's just the points that we need to pass across. So there's a wide variety of ways to do this. We can do it as families. We can do it as entire Revit models. We can leverage the construction cloud. We can link it to Vault, or we could go further where we've got a custom written transfer engine that's pulling just the necessary information, linking it from one to the other and passing it back and forth. Brian, do you have anything to add to that I kind of lined out?
I think you did a great job talking about that, and really open up your minds, everybody, on what this could be for the linking capabilities. You could be doing exterior cladding systems, and you're engineering and design and Inventor each individual panel, the structure behind it, the clipping system behind it. But we need to bring that information into Revit and identify in cladding elevations which panel types are where on what facade. We can automatically bring that data in as rich Revit content as each individual piece that can automatically be tagged. So there's many different ways to look at it, not just cladding. It could be interior components also with that.
Okay. So that's kind of what we wanted to give you an idea of today, right? How this information can be passed back and forth. The fact that we can leverage it in both locations, either sending the Revit models from Inventor across or pulling the Revit models into Inventor. Send it, how we can work with those back and forth, using the construction cloud to tag that information and have that. What I want to do is, this is a big topic, obviously. A lot of different ways this could work. And I just wanted to open it up to any questions we might have from the floor.
All right, question number one. It looks like, what industries are you seeing taking advantage of this?
So Brian, I know you mentioned a few already. Exterior cladding is one that comes to my mind. I know there's been a few different manufacturers, whether it's curtain wall systems is another one. I couldn't think of it there for a minute.
Yeah.
What else can you think of?
I'm seeing a lot of people are doing ceiling treatments, customized railing treatments happening. If you're doing any type of custom interior stone, I'm seeing that happen. And I just recently worked with a company that was developing custom casework when it goes inside the building, being able to better transfer that and panelize it and place rich data inside of Revit.
That's interesting. I hadn't worked with that one yet. No, that's good.
Okay. Question 2. When is it critical to build libraries versus using this workflow?
Brian, I'll let you speak to that one a little bit. Obviously, you've built a lot of libraries. So.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So the libraries are really important when your product is very flexible and dynamic. Let's use a window example. I want an exterior case window that comes in 35 options with 10 button patterns, jam extensions, so on and so forth. That's kind of a kit of parts that I can purchase, that I can see in a catalog. I would definitely do that as a family, as a library, to where you can mass distribute it out to absolutely everybody. Since I'm using the window example here, let's take a look at maybe you produce, instead of a catalog of windows, very, very customized windows for log cabins. I'm just throwing something random out there. That's a one-off instance that's going to be designed specifically for this building, for this project, for this design. And that's really where the data exchange comes into play.
Yep, that makes sense to me.
That's great. Okay. Do you need the construction cloud to do this?
You don't need it. So this, realistically, any CAD exists for Inventor. So we could do similar things via Dropbox or email. It wouldn't be nearly as interactive, and it's not as easy to set up the exact information. Brian was setting up an exact view, so he could send me just that interior. And Brian, you can speak to that a little bit from the Revit side. I know, I can easily send, whether it's email or box or whatever else it is, I can send the Revit file back to him, but we don't have that interactivity.
Yeah, I think for me, the construction cloud, the biggest benefit is the interactivity, being able to define the scope of the area and just send that information to Caleb, so it's easier for him to work with. He's not having to deal with hundreds of thousands of pieces of content from Revit that way. And then purely the bidirectional capability with the cloud. He can see my updates. I can send questions and issues to him to have him respond on. But short answer, no, you don't have to have the construction cloud, but there's actually benefits to having it.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Alex is asking, if you have an item that is adjustable, will the file be adjustable for the end user, or will I need to set up a library of various sizes that it could be?
Oh, that's a fun question. That really goes into content creation components of it. On the Revit side, you can send out a family that has what we call a type catalog that has fixed sizes available to it. Inside these families, however, if you don't want to do that, you want a person to be able to drag something and just make it longer, 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 and then it stops as soon as you exceed your maximum length. That's going to be a parametric function in Revit that we can also do that's user defined.
Yep. So creating a family from Inventor, it is, me and Brian mentioned earlier, it's static. So it is, completely. I can create a family, it can be used, but it is not going to be adjustable. So an Inventor, I'm used to the idea of having parameters and being able to flex something. Even if that's true on the Inventor side, once it goes to Revit, it is static. It is a single item. If you want to have flexible components, multiple sizes, that's best to be created as families in Revit, not as a family from Inventor.
Yeah, that term would be a native Revit family for you there, Alex.
In the chat. Okay. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions. So thank you always, Brian and Caleb. What a great team you guys are together. Ton of knowledge here. So thank you so much for your time. And thanks everyone for joining us today. If you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to me or your Imaginate rep. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks so much. You bet.
Thank you, everyone.